How do you gain the job you want, the money you need, and the amazing life that you deserve? This is the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And on this show, we interview difference makers and world changers who are disrupting for good. I'm your host, Nicole Jansen, and our guest today is Steve Edwards. Steve is a successful entrepreneur, a pilot, and an author of the best-selling book, Who is in Charge of You? He's been in the trenches of small business for many, many years. He's got 25 years of experience leading 500 plus employees in his company and has helped thousands of people live the life that they've always desired. And today we're going to do something a little different. So rather than me strictly interviewing him, which I've never been very good at anyway, let's be honest, he and I are going to banter back and forth a bit and have some fun, talk about entrepreneurship, talk about sales, success, overcoming adversity, and lots more that will come up as Steve and I have never had a shortage of things to talk about. So Steve, welcome to Leaders of Transformation. We're glad you're here today.
It's great to be here. I'm excited.
And thank you to Derek Mulligans for making the introduction. I've known Derek for 25, maybe 30 years now, I think. And he just gave me a recommendation, said, you and Steve need to talk. And so we did, and we talked a lot. It was great. So hit it off well. And so thank you, Derek, for making that awesome introduction. But before I go any further, this podcast is brought to you by my coaching and training company. And sometimes people ask me and say, like, what actually do you do, Nicole, outside of podcasting? And I do teach and coach and train business owners and leaders. And so if you're a leader who wants to be better, do better, make a greater impact, you can book a free consult with me. We can talk about where you are, where you want to go, and what it's going to take to get you there. And you can go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching for all the details and a link to my calendar. So there you go. All right, Steve. So let's talk a little bit about, I gave them a quick overview on who you are. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, yeah, that's a $20 question. Now I'll make it a 25-cent answer, but it's just, it's something you've just grown to be accustomed to. I was fortunate to grow up in a family business. My folks always taught us about entrepreneurialism. And, the funny story, I don't know what made me think of this, but I was a little kid and I used to be fascinated with garbage trucks. And I was convinced I could throw something in the back and keep it from crushing it. The back end comes around and grabs all the garbage. And I ran in the house one day. Can you imagine this as a parent? And I told my folks, I know what I want to do in my life. I'm probably in 5th grade. And I said, I want to be a garbage man. And, can you just imagine that? But my folks, it was very interesting. They said, Steve, that's awesome. Just own the truck.
Ooh, that's good.
I didn't get it at 5th grade, but I sure get it now, right? And that's just, and a lot of people are figuring that out now. They're realizing the JOB, which is, just over broke, is not the best route to go. And you can create a whole lot more freedom, because a lot of people that I train and teach, everyone wants that dream job. Then they get the dream job and it's great for a while and they're making all kinds of money. Things are great. But then they realize what they really wanted was freedom. And then it's a whole other conversation. And you really can't get a high paying job and get freedom at the same time. It doesn't work. It requires some sense of being an entrepreneur, whether in the off hours or full time, to do it, to really go create financial freedom. So that's, in a nutshell. So I've just taken that course. I could go a long time on that answer alone, but yeah, went through media, got into real estate, got into more things, less and less employees, because I've had 500 and it's a load. And, into the freedom that I have now to pretty much do. And I don't mean this to sound arrogant. I've just, at my age, I've created a life, fortunately, that I get to do not only what I want and not only when I want, but most importantly for your viewers, it's who I want to do it with. That's the best part. So, not everyone can do it. Not everyone should do it, but I think everyone should at least learn that it's not as hard as you think.
Well, and I think what you're also talking about here is options and choices, making your own choices. And when you talk about this idea of freedom, and maybe we can dispel some myths here, because both of us actually grew up in a family business. And you talk about having 500 plus employees. We had a team of, 1,500 active and independent business owners, plus probably represented about 15,000 inactive, semi wholesale customer-ish, all of that. and a lot of people and a lot of relationships to manage. And it was wonderful. And at the same time, a lot of times people think bigger is better and more is better, and that the goal of business has to be to grow some big company and have all these employees. And I have talked to so many people who have done that and then been disappointed with it and saying, like, now I'm trapped. Now I've got I've literally worked my way into a job and I can't leave it. And so when you talk about that process, you just kind of skimmed over how you kind of moved away from that. If somebody has found themselves in that position, maybe owning the business or in a family business, and they want to get out of that, what are some of the steps that they need to take to be able to kind of move away from that into what it is they want?
That is a really great question, because like you, I know a lot of people who own their own businesses and they have all these employees, and you wonder, do they own the business or does the business own them?
Yeah.
And, I knew when I was 29, had my first child, and I was working 100 hours a week, and it was my own company, but it owned me. All right. And I remember the first year of my son's life, I didn't see it. And I realized, man, I don't want to wake up when he's 18 years old and missed it, because there's no do-overs here. Right. Yeah. And that's when I started creating that freedom, that break, if you will, to go, I've got to do something that's more passive. And the way I started that process was, you've got to put yourself in to answer your question, you got to put yourself in some positions to get there. Either you got to be around people who are doing it and just let that energy and that knowledge and that discussions just bleed off on you. That happens with me a lot in my life, when my friends are, and again, I'm just one of many, right? There's nothing special about me. I've just taken a little different course in life. But when they hear how I talk, analyze, and think about deals, and they might have a job, they're like, whoa, it's like it's like the Matrix. You can take the red pill, you can take the blue pill. You don't have to go into the Matrix, but man, you're making a huge mistake if you don't know it exists. And I was fortunate. I got invited in a small town to be on a national bank board. And I had an option to either be on the audit committee or on the loan committee. And I chaired the loan committee because, even though we couldn't talk about it, every business that came through, every loan that came through the bank above like 300 grand required a business plan and a pro forma and financials. And I couldn't share it, but I got to see every one of them. And I'm shopping for businesses vis-a-vis the chairman of the loan committee. And it's funny, when we get done, everyone would throw the stuff on the middle of the table to be thrown away. I would keep mine. I've got 4 3-ring folders in my office that have all of these businesses in them. So if I ever want to do something, I can just open it up and see it pro forma. And that's actually how I found a hotel, because I saw they were doing 30% profit on 3 million in sales, a similar hotel that I wanted to be in. They only had 13 employees. It was like hospitality, like making people feel good. So I thought that's a mistake. But, so I started learning about hotels, and it's the willingness to never stop learning, I think, and create opportunities. This trip I was telling you about, I went on today to meet with a guy. It's just, you'll never have opportunities if you can't show up. But you can't show up if you're working 9 to 5, getting home, trying to cook dinner, get a little workout in, go to bed, lather, rinse, repeat. You've got to break that cycle at some point. You've got to be around people that can show you how, people like you and I.
Well, it's interesting, because this is a mindset more than it is. I mean, the behaviors that you're taking are actually a function of your mindset and the way that you see things. Because you talk about those people were throwing things, in the garbage after they were done, because they were thinking, this is my job, and when I'm done my job, I throw it out and I go home and do the thing, right? Like you said, rinse, lather, rinse and repeat. But what you did, and this is a great lesson, is you took what other people threw away and you saw the gold in it. And like, you showed up, you paid attention to the opportunities. And I think there's really something there to unpack, because, I talk to people all the time about this difference between obligation and opportunity. What is an obligation to one person going, oh, I have to do this thing, and, and just get through it. The entrepreneur, the successful person looks at it and says, where's the opportunity? Where's the silver lining in this? And because of that, they just see things differently.
They do. And you've got to be willing to show up. Sometimes it's a dud. I wonder if today was. I'm really not sure quite yet. But you never know. Sometimes, and what's also important, as you well know, and you and I are both salespeople by very nature, but it doesn't matter who you are, you've got to be liked. It's the old know, like, trust.
Right.
You can't have two of the three. You got to have all three. They got to know you, they got to like you, and they got to trust you. And that's what you and I build with people. We build rapport, and people like us want people like us to be with them, doing deals or showing them opportunity.
It creates deal flow.
It does. And my friends are always like, it's easy to write it off as just Steve's lucky, but it's all this underlying things. I don't know how many lunches I drive home from going, that's one of those examples that a month from now, they'll call, it'll look like magic, but it wasn't, because I got off my butt and I went and made an impression.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually, I think about a couple of years back, I was driving back from Canada, and I just felt this prompting to go to Denver. And, you're going from Toronto to where I was going to end up, which was Sacramento via Portland. Denver's not on the way. It's kind of like out of the way, and it made a 2,500 mile trip into a 3,700 mile trip, let's roughly. Okay. And I'm thinking, why do I want to go to Denver? But I just had this prompting, go to Denver, have a few meetings. Okay. So I did that. And I'm not saying you run around and, like, you're not saying, you run around half-cocked going all over the place, chasing things, but it was that prompting, that intuition that said, go. And so I went, had a few meetings. One of those meetings turned into a client, and I didn't go there thinking that. I went there to serve, just to connect, actually. And then when we were talking, it was like he was dealing with this particular situation, which happened to come up in the conversation. I happened to offer him a couple of ideas on it. We stayed in touch afterwards. Then I finished my trip. I'm in Sacramento, and we're talking, and he's like, hey, can you help me out with this? And it turned into a very lucrative client. And so, it's showing up is such a big deal. Now, you mentioned also sales, and sales, I believe it's the number one skill that we need to learn. And sales is about communication, it's negotiation, it's all that. But it's part of it is just the way I look at it is creating so much value in the marketplace that the marketplace wants to pay you back for it. And I know you teach sales. So, like, when you think about sales, how do you approach sales? How do you think about sales and or teach it to someone who may not have that level? Because it's like, for some people, it's like a complete flat spot. And without it, I don't care how great your idea is, it's not going to fly.
Man, that's a great question. And I'm excited to answer it, because it's easy when you're already a salesperson, right? We think and act that. But what if you're not? And I meet a lot of people who aren't salespeople, but one thing they've got to get their head wrapped around is life is sales. Life is sales. And whether you like it or not, you're selling yourself, because you got to remember, one of my big taglines is why should I choose you? Okay. And you think about that, it's easy to ask and it's really hard to answer. All right. Because everyone gets into this. The quick story, I had a speaking coach years ago when I started speaking. I wanted to get fast quick. So I hired a coach like people hire you and I now. And I remember she said, Steve, why should I hire you? And I mean, she was sitting at her desk, just like I am now. And I was on the other side of her desk. And I stood there for 30 seconds, vomiting my greatness on her. Okay, I was like, drop the mic. This is the man. And I'll never forget. She looked at me and she went, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa, what? She looked at everyone saying that. Why? How do you differentiate yourself? Because everyone's going to say that stuff. And let me tell you, it's one of the biggest things is, well, let me finish that statement, is you're asking, I want to talk to your viewers. You and I get this, right? People are asking you, why should I choose you as a friend? Why should I choose you as a mate? Why should I choose you as a business? Asking, why should I choose you? And if you're not cognizant of that thought, hence life is sales, it doesn't mean you got to schmooze and suck up, but you've got to create value in yourself. And and the way you do that is what I also call is everyone's favorite subject. Yeah. And we all know that's ourselves, right? I love me. Some me is what I like to say. I like to say, listen, I'm at a party. It's enough about me, enough about me. What do you think about me? Wouldn't that be great? The problem is no one wants to hear about me, and they don't want to hear about you either. Unfortunately, you know why? Because it cuts into the time that they've got to talk about their favorite subject. And that's where, there's so much to learn from so many people if you're just what I call being purely curious. And that's what you did in Denver. Is you and I, lots of adages and cliches here, and I apologize for that, but it's you and I, without even thinking, we give without wanting anything in return.
Yeah.
You're getting, because we just want to help.
Yeah. And it's fun. And it's fun to do that. It's inspiring. It's rewarding, even if there's no money involved.
It is, because isn't that what we're here for at the end of the day?
Yeah.
You know, I'm very blessed to be who I am and what I am, what I'm doing. And I just want everyone to share in this journey.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And you know, when I'm talking to people, I deflect probably to a fault. I might have just, and we're talking, I was like, hey, so where you like, I was in Chicago last weekend. And I'll be like, really? Tell me about that. Because don't you really want to talk about your passions or your favorite things to talk about, your kids, trips? It's very rarely your work, by the way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and they'll say to me, Steve, you been anywhere lately? And at least initially I'll be like, no, but tell me about Chicago. Because I don't need to say, well, I was in Italy and I'm going to one up you and all that, right? And then they're like, you know, I like this guy. I don't know why I like this guy, but it felt good to talk to him, because we've all been in the room when the person just won't shut up, right? Yeah. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's just, I was with that today. All right. I had that example today that I was trying to stay awake as I was, you know, the bragging just never stopped, and it gets old. And probably the biggest thing, if your viewers could take away anything from me, I would say what I do really well, and again, you do just as well, if not better, is I call it the most magical word in the English language. And it's advice. The word advice. It's free to give, doesn't cost anybody anything but a little bit of time. And I consistently, almost daily, I find people in my world who are smarter than me or doing things that I don't know as much about, and I search them out for their advice. Now remember, this is not advice with an agenda. This is, okay, it's a big difference. This, you know, the people who say, it's always, you know, how was the drive? How are things going? You're looking great. Oh, Nicole, I want or need, okay? Those people get eliminated quickly. Yeah. But if you go there for just pure advice on, and the money question is this, knowing what you know, I call it dipping into the ladle, turning decades into days, decades of learning into days. Nicole, if we're talking about, I want to do a podcast. I want to have my own podcast. I don't, but you do. Knowing what you know about podcasts, if you could go back, if you were me starting fresh, knowing what you know, what would you do differently? And now I better get a notepad out, because all this blood, sweat, and tears is going to come out, you know, and people don't do that. So they take the long road. They go create their own podcast, take 5 years to go, geez, oh, Nicole, I get it. And I could have just asked you and fast-tracked everything. It's just incredible.
Yeah. And with that, it's interesting because a lot of times I find that people, they know they're supposed to ask questions. They know they're supposed to ask for advice, but they don't know the questions to ask, or they're afraid to ask the questions. So they beat around the bush. How are you? You know, I'd like to be your friend. And here we are going, we're not looking for more friends, but if you need help, I'm happy to serve. I'm happy to answer your question. And so there's a great lesson in here, is that when you're meeting someone, just go straight. We're direct. We like things direct. Look, can I ask you a question? And when it's a well thought out question like that, like, tell me what, so I want to learn from you. We'll be happy to share that. But when it's done in this indirect way, and it's kind of like beating around the bush, then what happens is, I find, is that I get a little bit impatient, because I'm like, what's your question?
Yeah. What's the agenda?
What's the agenda? What's the agenda? Tell me where, tell me what you're, and to your point, it's not about a sales pitch. I'm not talking about like all the LinkedIn messages that I get, or that are like, hi, nice to meet you. Would you like to buy my stuff? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody saying, genuinely, I have a question. I want to learn something. Most successful people, because they know what it took, like you, they know what it took to get there. They're happy to pass on some insight to the next person to save them, the same
My
same
mom,
hassle.
my mom used to say, and it's true, sadly, people are not happy for your success. But there's a caveat I've learned. Successful people are.
Yes.
Because even though we're not talking about what I call the dark days of working all through the night and the next day and all through that night just to get to the finish line, because one, we don't want to remember that kind of pain. But we all know anyone that's been successful in any realm that you call success, I don't care if it's running a business or playing a guitar, okay? There was hard moments to get through, and we get it. We don't have to we don't have to commiserate in that misery because we already understand. And we know it's not luck. It was you working hard, harder than anybody else who wanted it because you wanted it more. And, there's just some things like that going on. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and there's something else when you talked about, I don't think you use that word pride, but it's that idea of the bragging, the person who was bragging to you and so forth, is that my experience is that people that are confident in themselves, they don't need to brag. So if somebody is bragging, if somebody is trying to prove themselves, if somebody is trying to put somebody else down, I always, I look past that, recognizing that really there is an insecurity underneath they're trying to mask.
Oh boy.
And this comes back to sales, because the number one sale you got to make is the one you make to yourself. You got to buy you on you. You want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Confidence is quiet.
Yes.
And you got to watch out for those people, and again, you sit there as a viewer and go, well, how do you learn this? Let me tell you an example of how you learn this. All right. I'm I think it was a bar. I've been flying for almost 40 years. I've been a pilot for almost 40 years. And who knows, I was probably in my late 20s, and I was in a bar and I was like, I'm a pilot. And this guy sitting next to me, he goes, I'm a pilot. I'll never forget. I said, so do you fly? And he said these words, and these words to me are the biggest red flag in my life now. He said, I fly a little bit. All right. I was like, well, you know what? I fly a lot of it. And let me tell you how great I am. And I did all that. And then I finally stopped and said, well, tell me about your flying. He was an astronaut.
Wow.
Yeah. Humbling experience. All right. And you got to go through those painful moments of being a complete idiot to figure out. But I look at everybody like it's a treasure chest. Everyone, and by the way, I missed what I was going to say back to the questions about being curious. You've got to have what I call noticing strategies. All right. If you walk into my office, and if I pivoted my computer over here, you'd really get it. But even here, what do you think Steve would love to talk about? Right.
Yeah.
In my old office, I used to have the most incredible pictures that you'd ever imagine. And one's hanging right there, me flying in formation with an F-18, my best buddy. All right. Nice. These are amazing pictures. And I'd have all these interviewers come in, interviewees. And I would sit there and I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired of talking about you. And I'd be like, so do you have any questions for me? And they'd say, most of the time they'd say no, but many times they'd say, yeah, I do. And I'd say, okay. I'm like, yes, we're going to talk about, ask me about flying, ask me about my favorite subject. And they'd say, so what's your 401k like, vacation time? And I'd be like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I got HR for that. I want to talk about me. And if you notice, I've created entire things off of some guy having a ping logo, golf ping logo on a shirt, and he had a ping hat on, and this and that. And I'm just being me because we're salespeople.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not going to offend him. I said, dude, are you sponsored by Ping? And he says, actually, I am. I was like, really? And he was a trick shot golf artist. Sounds cool. A week later, we're going to lunch, learn about it because I want to learn about him, right? He says, you got to meet my mom. I was like, really? Why? He says, because she's a speaking coach and a book editor, and she's one of the best in the field.
Wow.
She became my speaking coach. And
wow.
It's just noticing strategies. A friend of mine, I was in a hardware store, Lowe's. I don't know if you guys have Lowe's out in California, Lowe's hardware store. But I indirectly just call people by their name because they forget it's on their shirt.
Yes.
Right. And would you rather be called, hey, you, hey, lady, or would you rather be called Nicole? Right.
Right.
So and my buddy said to me one day, he was an engineer, and engineers aren't that good at EQ and sales. But he said, it is amazing the level of service you get by calling someone their name. And I didn't even notice I was doing it, but for those people that are saying, I don't know what to ask, just look around. If you walk into someone's house, someone's office, look, scan the room, their passions are right there in front of them. It's because that's what we want to live in, right?
Yeah.
So do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's being present. And if you are so worried about yourself and how you look and how you sound, you can't be present with another person because you're too busy thinking about, and this is a public speaking tip as well. It's like, how do I look? Do I look okay? Does the audience like me? Do I sound good? Do I sound intelligent? When all of that, or my clothes or whatever, all of that disconnects us from the other person, whether it's one person, whether it's 1,000 people or more. And so I'm a big fan of really talking about being present. What does it mean to be present, and what needs to happen in order for you to be able to be present in the meeting, so that you got, like, I'm clear, I've got my stuff, like, this is who, even like, let's say you get on stage or whatever, and it's like, okay, I'm good with me, whatever it is, it is. I'm not gonna worry about it now, and just show up. And I had somebody once that said to me, and stands out. People have said that before, but this one stood out. And she said, like, wow, you make it look so easy. And I said, number one, the easiest topic to have, to talk about is you, right? So, when I would do like DISC personality workshops, so easy to do that, because all we're talking about is who you are, and you're learning about who you are. People love that. Yeah. And the second thing is that I forget about myself, and I focus on this, because I realize this is not about me. It's not at all about me. It's about you. And I remember there was a woman that I did a collaborative workshop with, and we were actually teaching presentation skills, and it was a 3-day workshop and so forth. And she's very entertaining and dynamic and all of that. And I said to her, okay, before we get into this, we've got to get really clear on our approach in the outcome that we want out of this. I said, in my mind, there's two kinds of speakers. First kind of speaker, when they finish, people go, wow, they were so awesome. They were amazing. The second kind of speaker, and this goes also for trainer, but the presenter, the second presenter is the type that when they finish, that people say in the audience, say, wow, I'm amazing. I feel good about me. And you know what? When they feel good about themselves, they're going to feel good about you too.
Man, you're right on it. You really are. And I tell you, things that have been said to me that I never in my life would have dreamed would have been said. And every time it happens, you never forget it. Someone walks up to you and says, I just want you to know you changed my life today. And I'm like, holy crap. Wow. Because everyone has shit going on, right? And you don't see it, but your talk, if you do it correctly, like you're saying, and you're all about them, not about you. I call it, so many speakers out there, and I'm always using analogies, give a whole bunch of icing and a little bit of cake. And the cake is the content, but they got the show down, right? So you leave there and you're like, that was fun. And a day later, you're like, tell me some takeaways. You're like, well, I don't know, but it was really fun. I'm not that guy. I am a little bit of icing and a whole lot of cake, because all I want, same as you, is for people to get better and to show them, to maybe accelerate their growth, because they're so capable. What absolutely drives me to drink is the person who's in a lot of pain, whatever way you want to call pain, financial, emotional, physical, whatever. And we have the answers. At least we think we do, right? We've proven over the past we have, at least. And they don't want to hear it. And you're like, wow, what level of pain do you need to get to before you elicit a change? And it's very frustrating for me, because a lot of what I do for free, because I don't need the money, fortunately, but it's a nice reward for the hard work. But I just want to help people. And when I have people call me and say, I call it, you go from zero to hero. You go from wondering what you're going to do. I do this a lot with college students, all for free.
Talk about that. You talk about the work that you do with college students.
Yeah, I'm very proud to be College Speaker of the Year in many colleges. And it's not because I'm that good of a speaker. It's because I'm giving them the content that they so desperately need. I'm showing them how to not only find their passion, but go out and get advice to make sure you're not screwing that passion up. And then I show them what desire really looks like, and also how to position yourself in an interview to have what I call a moment of courage. I don't train people for an hour interview. I train them for 30 seconds to bring what I call a sledgehammer to a ice, a bag of ice. You just crush it, right? And because people want to know this person really wants it, and sadly, not many people do nowadays. We just want it easy. Where's the easy button? There is no easy button. So I'm very fortunate, and then I mentor students for free. Travel all over the country doing this. And some of the farther colleges, of course, they're paying me. The local ones around here, I do for free. But it's just so invigorating that a student had it just the other day. Her name was Eva. She's sitting there talking to me. Steve, I'm lost. I heard you speak. It was amazing. I don't know what I'm doing. So we break it down. We get through the process. I give them tasks. They either win or lose. I tell them, I can't make you walk through the door. I can only show you the door. You've got to walk through it. But once they see the door and they've been driven enough to come meet with me and you, and I'm doing it for free. All right. Because I don't want to segregate between a rich college kid and a poor college kid. I want to segregate between those that have desire and those that don't. And those that don't will never reach out to me. Right. But those that do, man, do you make a difference in their life. You put them on a path. She called me up. She's got their dream job. It's just her whole life in 6 months changed. And I've got hundreds of college students that have done this. And to me, that's one of the greatest rewards of all, that they're doing things that are just, they only dreamed of. And you and I both know it's not that hard. It's really hard if you don't have direction or training or coaching, because if you don't, but it's like a magic trick. It's amazing until you see how it was done. And then you're like, how did I not see that?
Yeah.
It was too easy.
Yeah, it's like success is actually quite simple.
It is.
It's hard. It takes work. It can get complex, the different moving parts and so forth. But when it comes right down to it, it's pretty simple. So, yeah.
And it's ultimate ownership. A neighbor of mine one day, I was so confused. He said to me, and this is a lot of people, you always know someone who doesn't like their job. It's very easy. And your viewers will know this. They either can't wait for 5 o'clock or they can't wait for Friday. All right. If you're one of those people, you need to call Nicole or myself because you're doing it wrong. All right. Yeah. But my buddy across the street was an engineer, and I was at his house one day on a Saturday, and you and I are checking emails 24/7, 365, right? Because that's what we do. We don't hate it. I might be screwing off on a Wednesday, but I may be working on Sunday. I don't care. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And he said to me, I don't check my emails over the weekend. He goes, it's my weekend. And I walked away confused. I really was confused. And I had to analyze. I realized, the reason is he's working for them and I'm working for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, I don't mind checking I have to, I want to. It's not punishment, but I don't know. It's so much more fulfilling when you're creating something and in charge of it. Now, you and I live by the sword and we die by the sword,
Yeah.
And
the good news is the future's in your hands. The bad news is future's in your hands.
Yeah, no jokes. But, if you put the right people around you, getting advice, you tend to not fall as far.
Well, and I think that when I say the bad news is because if you don't do something, you're not gonna produce any result either. So, we're not looking for the handouts, but it's to me, I wouldn't want it any other way because, and to your point about when you have the right people around you and so forth, is that even if, and I've said this to many people saying, look, even if you don't know how to get there, what you can have confidence in is your ability to figure it out and say, I may not know, but I can figure it out.
Yeah,
I can figure it out. I can learn. And you mentioned earlier about learning, it's like being able to learn, taking the stance of a learner, a lifelong learner. Number one, it's far more fun. And even from a leadership standpoint, I know there's a lot of leaders that I work with that, and that I hear about, people that have a leader who they're dealing with, that they think they need to have all the answers. They think they need to know it all. And what pressure that is from the leader's perspective, not just it's difficult for the people that are trying to work with them, but it's
Yeah.
the leader themselves, because they're actually putting self-inflicted pressure on themselves, thinking that they need to know it all. I've had business owners, men, say to me, I don't know why. I mean, I should know this. And I go, how do you figure that you should know this? Like, you know how to do your thing. You're really good at that. But you
Yeah.
think you need to know about all of this stuff? Who told you that? That's
Second
why
of
you
all,
have experts. That's why Henry Ford had the phone, and the classic story about he could pick up the phone and ask any any number of questions, because that was, that was not his job, is to know everything. You can't know everything. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
yeah, right. And I when I do leadership talks, I talk about drunk driving. And because if you're a leader and you're drunk driving, you're really screwing up. And what I mean by that is find your lane, figure out what you do well, stay in it. Put someone over here. We don't need anybody. Okay. And that's what leaders tend to think they need to do is, I don't know it. I should know it. So I'm going to drunk drive. Whereas I should just get a Nicole who is excellent in this area, or a Steve that's over here in this area, and just let them do what they do. And we all run in our lanes. And great leaders know how to do that. And poor leaders, and I've been one in the past, that's how I learned this, right? Poor leaders are drunk driving, trying to do it all. We got the cape on, we're Superman, right? Or Wonder Woman, or whatever we're doing. And it just doesn't work, because we're only human, and like you said, you're right. Once you learn it, you're like, like the magic trick, right? I got it now. But someone's got to show you that.
Yeah.
And your viewers, when I'm always sitting there like you, thinking about what would your viewers want? I don't care about me. I want your viewers to get some content out of this. And if you're sitting there trying to figure out, what should I do? How do I make some first steps? Well, the first steps is to contact you or I, because we're both pretty good at this. But the second step is to sit there and do what I call find the pain, fix the pain. If you want to find wealth in life, and financial wealth, especially that, and happiness as well, but financial wealth, you've got to find pain. You've got to find things that people will pay to get out of. People will pay a lot. Listen, if your back is killing you, do you care what the chiropractor costs? I mean, if it's
To find the money.
Right. People will pay if you're in emotional pain, right? What breaks up most marriages? Money, right? Money's number one, the lack thereof.
Yep.
And all kinds of emotional pains that go along with it. But if you can find pains in the world and fix it, whether it's that just requires observing different things, and find the pain to fix the pain. And that's really a way to get started on that journey.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're good at this. You're sitting here saying, I'm not that good of an interview.
I didn't say that. Did I say that?
No, you say when you and I talk on the phone, the reason we talk for hours is because it's so invigorating to share these thoughts. If your viewers can take away, you and I can do this literally for hours. We've done it for hours because we're not trying to one up each other.
Yeah.
We're both learning from each other, because you come at the world differently than I do. And it's really cool to put those together and just keep building on it. But the same token is, it's just as easy to not do it. That's what's annoying.
Yeah. And it's a great example, even just our conversations, when you get around people that are purposeful. So we're not just shooting the breeze. There's a purpose behind it. And the purpose is it's inspiration. It's not necessarily an agenda to get something, but the purpose is to give something. The purpose is to share. And then what happens is it's like energy. It just flows and it actually elevates, and we elevate each other. We inspire. When I walk away from have conversations like with the ones that I've had with you and others, it's like I'm expanded. I feel expanded by it. Why? Because we're talking about things that matter, things that are close to our heart, rather than the news and the weather and whatever it is that actually is shrinking. And I was just thinking about the quote that says, what is it? Small people talk about people, average people talk about things, big people, big-minded, talk about ideas. And
I just read that the other day.
Yeah. And it's this idea of like, what are you, so as a takeaway, even for our listeners, it's like, notice your language, notice what you're actually talking about on a regular basis. Are you talking about the news? Are you talking about what's happening with the politicians doing, who's doing what? or are you talking about ideas? And all we've been doing really is talking about life experience, but we're talking about concepts and ideas and all of that. And when you start anytime I get into those types of conversations, it's expansive because one idea leads to another idea, leads to another idea. And it grows from there, versus when we talk about petty things, small gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like there's another saying. So one of my favorite is man wrapped up in himself makes a mighty small package. You ever heard that one?
I have not. That's good though.
Right? You think it's like we're just all wrapped up in ourselves. So yeah.
I could continue on that line, but I'll keep it clean for right now. I simplify things even more because I call them idiot friends. Idiot friends. Idiot friends, the welcome sign's always on, and you're always welcome to come in to be mediocre, because idiot friends are always whining. They're always, something's bad happening. Okay. Can't get the job I want. I don't have the money I need. My spouse is a jerk, whatever. It's always negative, negative, negative. And quality people, and this is the most important thing, and you will so get this. We haven't talked about this in the past, but quality people quality friends believe in you when you don't believe in you.
Yes.
And viewers, look at her reaction. Okay. Because we do things that we don't believe we can do, but I'm smart enough to know who my idiot friends are and who my quality friends are. And I only run to my quality friends. And listen, we only have so much time to spend in our life with people that we love and want to be around. Choose wisely. And all I'm asking you is know who your idiot friends are. We've all got them. And they get because by the way, idiot friends are always, and I ask audiences, always fun. They are. Idiot friends are fun, but they're still idiots. And I say, listen, just spend your time with people who will help you grow and help you get over hurdles that you don't believe you can do. And if we had time, I'd tell you some of those stories, but it's incredible. You can tell the same stories, but it's just the quality friends are just, I was trying to figure out where I was going with that, but it's just really important because idiot friends will take you down. Oh, that's what I was going to say is I told my folks the other day, I have a very simple measure for who's my friend. Okay. Very simple. And this is what I would recommend for your viewers as well. Just ask yourself one question. Do they make me better?
Yeah.
I don't care how. I don't care if they're dead broke. But if they're making me better in some other aspect of my life, man, I am all in for you. Because we're all fighting this thing called life together. And, and that's all I want. But if you are not, and if you're a negative Nelly, you're talking about the news, I just do a slow purge, and all of a sudden I'm just a whole lot busier for than I was, because life is hard enough already. I don't need somebody drilling me down to make it even harder. I just don't. And I encourage your viewers to think that through.
Yeah, there was a book many years ago I read, which was called Balcony People. And some people are balcony people. Some people are basement people. And you got to know who, and surround yourself with people who are balcony people. Oh. And to your point earlier, when I was responding to that, because, if we are who we associate with, if you want a cold, you hang out with people who have colds, and we all appreciate that all more than ever, about who we hang out with and whether we get sick or not. That the thing is that a lot of times people focus on the cold, they focus on the physical, but the more important thing is actually the mental, and who are you hanging out with and what are they speaking into your life? I'm a big advocate of speaking life. Life and death is in the power of our tongue. What we say, our words create our world. And our thoughts create our world. And so when we speak life over ourselves, when we speak life over others, we're also speaking that out. And so it's not only does it help the other person, it actually helps us too. So it's a win-win for all of us. And it's also, if it's actually a triple win, because that person goes out and maybe talks to somebody else, and now they're elevated. Now they're going to feel a whole lot better and encouraged, and they're going to go encourage someone else. And it's a ripple effect.
Don't you hate when you call someone and you say, hey, because you and I, we're salespeople, but we also recognize no one cares about my crap.
Yeah.
Right? It's sadly, but true.
Yeah, people ask, how are you doing? But they don't really want to know.
Yeah. So I'm just like, hey, I'm doing great. Now I might be having the worst day, but do you really want me to say, oh, Nicole, it's just bad. I'm not in a good mood. It's just been a bad day. And you're like, oh, why did I call? Right? Because, one thing as they always say, this is not a new quote, when you're always in charge, you can always take charge of your attitude.
Yes.
And, you might have some bad days, and God knows I've had some horrible ones, but you can still define how you want to view that. I've done very poor in the past, but through maturity and age and getting better at it, I'm like, you know what? You got to keep things in perspective. And, but it helps when you're around people who are doing the same. Yeah. And you're right. It's idiot friends. I tell you what, they can rub off on you, and and I've had this happen. That's why I know this, right? You just over time,
subtle.
It's very subtle, but it starts, their little negative kicks to their wife. All of a sudden you're negative kicking to your wife because it just feels that it's kind of cute, right? It's just subtle things that grow like a poisonous plant. And that's why I know this. It wasn't because I'm thought this in my sleep. I've hung out with idiots. I've become an idiot. I've learned, and I don't do that anymore. At least I work very hard not to.
Yeah.
Because,
man, one of the things that I say is, you talk about the bad days, is because, hey, if somebody comes to me, I want to hear if they're having a bad day, I want to be there to encourage them.
Absolutely.
But rather than saying these are all the bad things that are happening to me and it's never going to work, or it's always like this, or talking negatively about it and complaining about it, is what I find with successful people. If they are having a bad day and you say, hey, how you doing? And they're like, oh man, it's been rough today. And so what are you doing about it? Right. And if even before I ask that question, they're already saying, and this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm moving out. So it's what I call the, so what, now what? So that happened. Got it. As is it. Now, what are we going to do about it? Because that's, we're not going to wallow in it. We're not going to sit there. That's the difference. It's not that bad things don't happen to successful people. It's how they handle it. And that's what makes the difference.
You know what I do is, and I bet $1,000 right now, you do the same thing. When it's really going bad, I go through, let's say I've got a real estate deal. It's just going completely in the crapper. I don't whine to my buddies. I go through my Rolodex of real estate people. Yeah. And I call them up and say, hey, I need your advice.
Yes.
This is what's happened. This is what's happened. What do you think? What would you do if you were me?
Yeah.
I do this all the time. And they're like, Steve, you're either totally screwed. I've had that before. Or, Steve, have you thought about this? And I'm like, no, what is that? Oh, they said, I've done this before. Here's what happens. Here's what you need to do. I'm like, okay. And you pivot.
Yeah. Or
you just sit there and wallow in it and going, what do I do? Life's awful, blah, blah, blah. Just go.
Yeah. And then it continues to be.
Yeah.
So it is.
Exactly. But people like you and I and everyone working their butts off, we want to help. We don't want people to suffer through some of the things we've suffered through. If we can help it, but most people don't want to ask. It's so easier to turn on the TV, go brain dead, and go to bed and do it over again.
Yeah.
And it's just sad because you get one shot at this thing called life, and it's a lot more fun if you do it the way you were designed to do it.
Well, and you can be an example to others. And that's the way I look at it. And I remember, actually reminds me of what one of my mentors said once. I told him, I said, I've always wanted to be an example. And he goes, oh, Nicole, you're always an example. The question is, what kind of example are you? And I was like, oh, good point. We're all an example. And so the question is, what kind of example are you? And maybe it's your children that are listening, or maybe it's a neighbor, or it's a friend, or you're somewhere, or coworker, and you're saying things, and either A, you're adding value, or B, you're subtracting value. It's kind of like we're always ever moving forward or moving backwards. There's no staying the same. There's no, I'm just going to hold court here. It's a false perception of staying the same, because as you're staying the same, or you think you're staying the same, the world around you is changing. Everybody else around you, the dynamics are changing. And
I call it backdoor leadership, because it's my little term. It's probably not original, but that's what I call it. I think it's original. It's when you're living your life in a quality way, you don't have to lead. It happens through the back door. They come in through the back door because they're like, hey, this is, I like what you said. And I'm like, what did I say? Or what you did, or what I do. And but again, it's an active measure that you've got to recognize in your life, that you've got to get around people who are doing things that interest you or that you want to learn from, and just start being curious. And it's a very simple process. It seems very, to a lot of people I coach, it seems almost scary to go ask someone for their advice, but we're all dying to give it, right? And when I talk to college kids, I say, listen, when you were a senior in high school and you were a little scared of college, could you have not, I'm talking usually seniors in college. I'm like, if a high school senior asked you, could you give me some advice of what you wish you knew 4 years ago? Could you not guide them on some things to do and things not to? Then they start laughing, like, yeah, but no one ever asked, right? Because why? Let's just go the hard way, figure it out for ourselves. I like to cheat the system and go in and get advice from people who are doing it better, quicker, faster than I am. And it makes me quicker.
Yeah. Well, I think about that scenario, and what is the thing that holds people back from saying that or asking the question is, I don't want to look stupid. No. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to be lost and confused for a few years to avoid looking stupid. Hello. So you know what? You'd be better off just asking the person, getting the advice, moving forward. No, that's smart, actually. And I want to bring up one point with that is, for those that are maybe thinking or just hearing the objection, right?
Yeah.
Is, I don't have those people around me. How can I ask that question? Like, I'm so far removed from those successful people. How do I get to them to ask the question or ask for their advice? What would you suggest to them? Where could they start with that?
Get off your butt and quit giving yourself self-limiting language. All right. Because you got to realize everyone's got a candy bar. We're just waiting for someone to ask for it. All right. And no one's asking for it. And if you want to differentiate yourself in a business, just walk in and ask for advice. But let me clarify something. I have a lot of, good or bad, I'm not sure which, but a lot of politician friends. And they call me periodically, Steve, what's going on? And I'm like, defenses are, I'm like, hey, good to hear from you. How's it going? And usually at the end of the call, the kicker comes, hey, and by the way, we're having a capital raise. Love to have you. And there it is, right? Like a turn in a punch bowl is, and that's why, but sometimes they call me and they're just like, good to hear from you, brother, man. We'll talk to you soon. And I'm like, I wish I had known there wasn't going to be an ask, and I would have lowered my defenses. And I say all that to say, when you go ask for advice, we're sitting there going, where am I going to get kicked in the head? There's going to be, they need a job, they need money, they need a favor, something's coming, and I'm waiting for it. But if they start the conversation and say, Nicole, listen, I love what you do. I would love to be you one day. And we're already going, well, okay, that feels good, right? But, and say, listen, I'm not here for anything. I don't shoot the elephant in the room. I'm not here for anything, Nicole. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. The only thing I'm here for is for advice. Could I get 5 minutes of your time? Because I've always wanted to do what you're doing. Could I just get 5 minutes of your time to come into your office and sit down with you? I promise, put me on a timer, 5 minutes. I just want to ask you some questions about how I could one day be like you. And listen, if that person tells you to go piss off, you don't want to talk to them anyway. But, we might not entertain a in-office meeting because we want to control the dynamic, right? That's why people don't go to lunches, go to a coffee. Give us an out. Give us a way to end this quickly if you're not working. Yeah, or Zoom, right? Because you and I can get busy really, really quick, can't we? If there's nothing there. But if we're really just trying to help, like you do this podcast, at the very core of its purpose is to help. Yeah. I'm here for time with you, and you and I spend hours talking, because if there's one person watching this podcast that you and I help, best time spent ever. Yeah. It just is. But they just gotta, we're all dying to tell you, all we need you to do is ask. Yeah. And we just got to be sure that there's not a hidden agenda going on. Yeah,
there's not a hidden agenda, and what comes up is this, that you genuinely want to know. And it's not just making up a question because you want to get somebody on the phone, and hopefully, like, you've got to have, there's got to be some intention. So, y'all don't message me and say, hey, I want 5 minutes of your time just to shoot the breeze. with a question, right? And Steve, the same thing for you. It's like you said, we can get busy really fast, and we are busy, or maybe better word is productive. We're being highly productive with our time. The truth is we can make money, lose it, make it back again, but time is valuable. Time can never be regained. And so for investing time, I am happy to do that. It's a good investment, like you said, into having quality conversations, helping somebody out, answering a question. I do it often and I love it. And it's with a real genuine question, a real genuine interest. And that is, and so if it's not that, then save the card, and wait until you have a question that you really want the answer to, that's really going to make a difference in your life.
It's true, because I say you've got to be not only curious, you've got to be purely curious with no agenda. Because I tell you, you and I and everyone like us, if you're there schmoozing, we will see it instantly and we will shut it down right away.
Yeah.
And you won't get a second chance.
Yeah.
But that's when you're wanting to learn just to be better as a person. Because you got to remember, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And, but everyone has their hand out, wanting something put in it. And we're trying to know it's not how it works.
Yeah.
It just is.
Well, and not to beat a dead horse or anything like that. What I find is that sometimes people ask questions that are hypothetical questions. Like, if this was to happen, that would bring a real question, bring a real genuine, like, when you get the answer to that, when you get the advice that you're going to go and apply it, you're going to put that seed in the ground and water that sucker. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to do everything that somebody else recommends. You're going to filter it through. Does it make sense? But whatever that is, you're going to take that and come back to what you said a little while ago. You talked about winning and losing, or like that, when they go into the interview and so forth. One of my mentors, he has this great saying. He says, you either win or you learn. So either you're going to plant that seed and do something with it directly, or you're going to learn something, and it's going to just even train your brain to think through the process, and you're going to apply that. Either way, something's being planted into that ground. Something's going to grow out of that. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, because when someone's nervous about going to get advice, they got to ask themselves, what's the downside? I ask myself with everything. What's the downside? Once you mitigate the downside, and the reality is let's say college students, right? Is they don't have the job walking in, they don't have the job walking out. So
you got to know already.
You're already on, I tell them sometimes, I'm like, listen, if you laid on the floor, would you be scared of falling? That's where you are. Right. Yeah. But I have yet to find something that can come bad from being purely curious and simply wanting advice.
Yeah.
And now here's what's really important is I tell people that this, even with me, it's like a big sausage grinder. You take all that advice and you pile it in, and then you extract out about 20% that works for you and throw the rest away.
Yeah.
But you got to do it with 2 or 3 or 4 people, because your advice and my advice might be very different, but you can combine them into what works for you. Now you're making objective decisions instead of subjective decisions. And gosh, people are guilty of that. They just assume it's either good or bad, but they've never gone out to see if it is or not. Because I would sit there and go, I think if I had my own podcast, it would be awful. I'd have to be in front of this mic. But if I asked you, you'd be like, best thing ever. Now, wait a minute. That's contrary to what I thought. So tell me why. Break that down for me. It's so simple. And it's just asking little questions. And over the 30 years I've been doing this, because I didn't do much right when I was young, but I was curious, because I just loved learning what people do. And what I've learned is I have an ocean of knowledge an inch deep. I know a little bit about a lot. And that's all you need to do. For instance, if I talk to you and I'm like, hey, Nicole, good to meet you. We're at a party, we're talking, so what do you do? And well, Steve, I'm in medical sales. All right. Well, I'm like, I know Stryker, I know Zimmer. Okay. I know just an inch. I'm like, yeah, are you with Stryker? Are you with Zimmer? Well, no, I'm with another company. So I'm like, cool. Well, I only know those two. So what's your company do? But I've ignited the conversation.
Yeah.
Because I've taken the time over the years to be able, I can't continue the conversation. That's where being curious and everyone's favorite subject comes in.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, so tell me about that. What do you do? What do you know? All these things, and by the way, those, they're called cables that go in your sunglasses. They're like a cable. That's a medical device salesperson for Stryker. And those are what are put on prosthesis and things like that, those cables.
Oh, wow.
And one day, he's in Nashville. One day he had thought he had one to hold his glasses on. That's medical grade cable called cables, CABLZ, I think, that holds your sunglasses.
Wow.
And that's a story at a party from a medical sales guy. Now, does that benefit me? I guess right now it does, because I can tell the story, but it's just cool to know someone like that, right?
Yeah.
And we're all dying to tell our story.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, we could talk for hours, and we have. I want to finish off and just have some fun with a couple of finish this sentence.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. These will be easy.
Oh,
These will be easy. When in doubt.
It's all the cliche answers come to mind right away, but when in doubt, get advice. I know I'm a broken record, but it just works. It just solves your doubt. When in doubt, get advice. How about you? What's yours? When in doubt, what?
When in doubt, pray and take action.
That's the thing we don't even talk about, is my friends know that one thing I don't talk about it. I just do it. But I'm sorry to break. Let me tell this quick story. It's really quick. One day, a buddy of mine who had never heard me speak, okay, he's a business guy. He says, Steve, it looks like you make quick decisions and shoot, but in reality, you don't. And I was like, walk me through that, because I don't know. What are you seeing? And he's like, you're like a submarine. He goes, you're underwater and you're collecting all this data. He's never heard me speak about getting advice and learning and gathering all the data. He says, and when you've gotten all the data that you need, and you're making the right decision, the best that you know how, which, by the way, for entrepreneurs is at best 70%. Then we play whack-a-mole on the way down, right? As problems arise, right? He says, then you surface and just shoot.
Yeah.
He goes, the only thing people see you do is surface and shoot. They think it looks flippant, and yet it's not. And I'm like, no truer words could be spoken, because you have to take action, but you can't just shoot. So we're both right. You are getting that advice, getting that data.
I'm just getting the advice internally, right? Just kind of connecting in, and then it's, And then I might go and say, okay, talk to this person, go do this. There's going to be some action that's going to be taken out of that.
Yeah. That's why my friends know when I do emerge and say, I'm going to go do this, they know I'm not talking anymore.
Yeah. You thought it through.
Yeah, we're going. They don't see the thinking it through part. So there you go. Good answer. Okay. What's another one?
Cool. Success begins.
Wow. I'm not good at this. I'd say success begins one step at a time. It's not a leaps and bounds. It's incremental, but never ending. And, if I look back 30 years and you told me that I would be doing the things that I'm doing with the people I'm doing them with, I would be like, you are on something. This is not who I am. This is not even feasible. But one thing leads to another, which leads to another. Look at me and Derek. I met the guy you mentioned up front, a mutual friend of ours, in Punta Cana at a vacation resort with his family. My daughter and I were there on a daddy-daughter trip. She's about 20 years old. We got to be friends with them. Derek and I have stayed friends. And he says to me, we start talking about my speaking and all that. And he's like, Steve, you've got to meet this great friend of mine named Nicole. And this is how opportunities in our lives make it look magical, but they just present themselves because everyone's trying to help everybody. What would you say? Success begins?
I would say that success begins in the heart. It begins inside. It starts. What's that?
There's so many answers to this.
There are so many answers to that. Yeah. And it's because you've been talking about it here, about where it starts, and it starts from the inside, and you just naturally, you're a doer, you're an action taker, and so forth. But in order for you to take those actions, you're following those steps that you're taking, right? You're following, and the curiosity that all comes out of your heart for for learning, your heart for curiosity, your love of people. So that's what I would say.
And
One more. Okay.
I got to show you something real quick. Viewers, watch Nicole real quick. All I got to do is tell you that you can't do it. Yeah. Those are fighting words, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't tell that to someone like us.
I had a coach once. This is what not to do, by the way, for the coaches out there. But anyway, I had a coach, and I said, at least to somebody like Steve or I, is that I was going to take a break. Okay. Cause I had a few other things that were going on. And I said, let's just pause for a month and come back. And he replied to me and he said, my experience is that when people quit, they quit with me, or they stop, they never come back, and they quit life and they give up and da, 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 da. And I was like, whoa, back up. So actually what I said to him was, thank you for sharing. I was doing this a long time before you got here, and I'll be doing this a long time after you are gone. So, but it's like, those were fighting words. It was like, oh, you think so? I had a coach or a mentor one time that said, Nicole, I know you can, but will you? And but he was challenging me. He was stirring that up inside me. It was different, but with someone who, it brings that out of the heart, it brings that fire. It's those fighting words to go, oh, let me show you, or I don't care what you think. I'm going to do it anyway, because this is who I am.
My takeaway in that first coach, what was his ultimate motive? What was he thinking of?
Oh yeah. He was thinking about keeping a client.
Darn straight. And that's when you fail.
Yeah.
That is when you start thinking internally instead of externally, you will fail.
Yeah.
And if his motivation was pure and to make you better,
he would ask me a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would have asked me why and what was going on and when and how and what would it look like and so forth. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's probably a broke trainer too, and he needed the money, So, I don't know. Everyone thinks about themselves. It's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Last one. Fulfillment in life requires.
Oh man, friends, family, and God, I would say.
Oh, I like that.
It really does. It's friends, probably the 3 F's: friends, family, and faith.
Yeah.
Because what do you have if you? I was just with a guy. I'm sure he probably won't see this, but he had tons of money, but he's got no friends. He was so excited for me to come down and visit with him. And I'm like, what's the point if you don't have great friends, good family, and your faith? I mean, what do you got? Yeah. I mean, because I've been in doctor's offices. I remember I was in a waiting room and the girl was there and she was waiting. And I was like, what do you do for a living? She's like, I work in hospice. I was like, really? So you're there when people are dying? She's like, yeah. I said, okay. Walk me through that. What's going in there? See, this is how I work, right? I just got to know. And there's nothing in it for me. I just want, she's like, it's amazing, Steve. She goes, they don't care about money. They're handing us $100 bills. So if you want some deals, go work at a hospice. You're going to get some handouts. But she goes, it's not that. They just want to be around their family. They have regrets. Their friends and their faith. She goes, it's all in play. But money to them is now incredibly irrelevant. And I thought that was impressive.
Yeah.
What about you?
They're not going to take it with them. So all the money in the world.
I had a pastor one day say, I put this in my book. If you think about it, life is like a game of Monopoly, which is a game that I play. Okay. I am playing Monopoly. Don't get with my real estate stuff. But he says it ends exactly like a Monopoly game ends every time. You pick the board up and you slide it all that crap back in the box and you fold the board up and put it away. That's the game of life. It's fun to have the houses and the hotels on the Monopoly board, but it's all going to end the same way. So at the end, we really had to fall back on. How about you? What's your answer?
Well, for me, it's knowing and accepting yourself. The fulfillment requires that you feel good about you. And to your point, I think our answers all kind of tie in together with each other, right? Is to know and accept yourself. Because if you don't accept yourself, you can appear to have all the things, but if you don't love yourself and fully accept who you are, then you're always going to be searching. And maybe that's kind of my point of reference, because recently I've been having conversations with someone who has spent a lot of time trying to search to find himself out there and then realized that none of the fulfillment was ever going to be out there with anything, even friends and all that stuff, quote unquote friends, until he understood who he was. And then the real him could show up, and there's freedom, there's fulfillment in that. And then all the rest of it comes from that, so it ties very much into your answer as well.
Yeah, because let's be real. I have probably as many insecurities as anybody else watching this. Okay. Let's not kid each other. The difference is I'm just fortunate to have people who love me around me that are believing in me and telling me things to pick me up and and make me okay, maybe I'm better than I think I am. You know what I mean? Because we're all fighting this thing called life, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have anyone doing that, and if you don't have anyone doing that in your life, let me tell you what, there are people like you and me, but YouTube, go to YouTube. There is all kinds of people on YouTube giving great, great advice. And Tony Robbins is one of my favorites. He's the biggest guy out there, but you can go to Tony Robbins for depression, Tony Robbins for anxiety, whatever your problem is, the guy's got an answer for you. And when I'm walking my dog, I'm on my AirPods and I'm getting better. I'm trying to be better because, I'm just, sometimes, we're all struggling in life and it gets difficult and you just got to have those resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Life is about relationships. Got to have good relationships. And the first relationship you got to have, obviously God, and you got to have a good relationship with yourself. You got to sell you on you, comes back to sales. You got to sell you on you. And then you can.
It's a shame we live on different coasts because I'm in South Carolina, you're in California, but I guarantee you that if I lived in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
If I lived in San Diego, at least once a week, you and I'd be going to lunch, and only for the fact of just feeding off each other and doing this kind of thing. I do that with friends here, and it's just invigorating because it's hard to find.
It is.
It really is hard to find.
Yeah.
And when you find people like us, I guess, latch onto them and get better together.
Yeah. And to your point about even like YouTube and social media is brilliant for that. There are some really great people that are putting some great quality content out there that can give you that fuel to get things moving if you are feeling isolated by yourself. And with that, I'm going to do a plug for Steve's website. So steveedwardsinc.com. You can go to his website and get a copy of his book. And
more importantly, email me or call me. If you put that information up for them, I'd much prefer an email or a call because I'm a hands-on kind of guy and let's get things done. If I don't get right back to you, I will quickly, as I'm a quick response guy. But if I can help. But again, like you said earlier, you got to be legit. You got to have that burning desire in your heart. That's like, this is the answer I've been looking for. I need to reach out. I need to go.
Yeah.
And people like you and I can't help them. We know people who can.
That's right.
We have a wide network, right?
That's
we know people who know people who rob people. So like that.
Well, yeah. Well, and the thing is that when you talk to somebody who's successful and they can feel that hunger and that real genuine desire. I know that when people come to me and they're genuinely hungry, they're genuinely curious, and want to learn and want to grow, then man, I will like bend over backwards to help them if I can, to help them in any way to be able to move forward with that. And so don't be lukewarm. You gotta be hungry though. You gotta be, I think of Les Brown. You gotta be hungry,
Yeah.
So
right?
Well, Steve, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing with this podcast, for everyone that's listening to it and watching it, because whether it's me or someone else, thank you, because you're the one that made it happen. It's easy to sit here and just be on it. It's harder to do what you do. So, and for those that don't know, you spent a lot of time and a lot of effort vetting me to even be here today. So I appreciate you taking the time to let me be on your podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. And okay, so ulterior motive, I get to have these awesome conversations too. So blesses me, and I get to record them so that others can enjoy them as well, because you and I have had some really great conversations and I love that. Yeah. And then it's like, hey, if I do a podcast, then I can record those and others can benefit and I can continue to live on long after the conversation is ended. So again, thank you so much. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our viewers for being here. Go check out steveedwardsinc.com. That is Steve's website, and the name of his book. Go get a copy of Who's in Charge of You. And we've been talking about that here today. So I encourage you that. I say it almost every time. Leaders of transformation, take action. Take action on something that you learned here today. It means nothing. Information means nothing unless you do something with it. So applied knowledge is power. Okay. So whatever, struck you, maybe go back and listen to this. There was a lot of nuggets in here, even though it sounded like it was this casual conversation. There is gold in them there hills, what we've talked about. So I encourage you to re-listen, take notes, and take action on those, what you learned here today. And we'd love to hear from you. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can find me through the contact page. You can send me an email, let me know. You can also, of course, find us on social. We're, of course, at Leaders of Transformation over all the different websites and so forth. And reach out and let us know how this has impacted you. We'd love to hear from you. And we will make sure that the phone number and email for Steve is in the show notes. And so you want to go on leadersoftransformation.com and find this episode there. And so all the information will be there. All right. So with that, have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys.